Hi, my name is Paul, and this is Donkey, my VW T4 2.4 diesel 1996 rock box of a van. Now I've had the van about 6 years, but for the last 2, it's not gone anywhere. I was told when I first got the van by my mechanic that it wasn't really going to be economically viable to properly restore the van because it was in such a bad state. So it's been sort of patched up and repaired just enough to get it through its MOTs and things. But for the last 2, I've not used it and it's completely rotten away on my driveway. So at the start of lockdown, I decided to do something about it. Now I'm not a mechanic, but I'm a little bit of an engineer. I've got an angle grinder and a welder, so I thought I'd have a crack at it. I really had nothing to lose. It was either a case of scrap it or restore it. So I've done a hell of a lot of work to this van in the last year, and I've got lots of photos and videos and things I can show you guys what I've done to get this sort of, hopefully in the next couple of months, roadworthy and back into its former glory. And then once it's all restored, I can then convert it to the camper van that it should always have been. So I've had a request from one of my subscribers if I can show him how I went about doing the rear wheel arches. Now this is one of the very first jobs I ever undertook on this van, and I learned a lot. It was a steep learning curve. So I'll show you what I did, how I went about it, and things I'd do differently if I was to do it again. Okay, so at first sight, the wheel arches actually look okay. Bit of fiberglass, bit of body filler, sand it down, and we'll be good to go, right? Wrong. So I'll take the bumper off, and I can see there's something not quite right behind here. Peel it back, and bits start falling out onto the floor. Put my hand up inside the wheel arch, and it just goes straight through. Literally, I can see the insulation falling down from the inside of the van. So I know that I really need to get stuck into it. Both sides, there are holes big enough to stick your head through. So these look like common places for the vans to rot in. Take the bumper off, take the tow bar off, give yourself good access to get inside there and properly inspect everything that needs doing. Once you've sort of tapped around with a screwdriver and a hammer, you can start to see just exactly how much you're going to have to get stuck into doing a job like this. So this is the panel that I ordered, and it only came a few days later. There are loads of places online selling replacement panels like this, and they don't cost as much as you think. If you're going to be doing the majority of the van, the wings, the sills, the doors, you're better off just buying the larger kits that are available rather than buying all the parts individually, as obviously it does cost a bit more to do it. But for the first job that I was doing, not knowing how it's going to go, I just bought the one part to see how it went on. So here we go with the first cut into the side of the van. Really daunting, but really had nothing to lose. So I got the Repatch panel, and I noticed that I didn't have to use the whole thing, and also that V-shaped cut that runs down the side of the van, well, it didn't quite match the patch panel. It was a slightly different shape. So I realised that you don't really have to use the whole panel, so you can just cut off the bit that you want. So I cut around the wheel arch, just cutting off just above the rust. Then I made the patch panel just a little bit bigger than that. Overlaid the panel on the side of the van, drew round it with the marker pen, and got to work with the angle grinder cutting along those lines as close as I could. Now that the wing is out of the way, we can actually work on that inner arch. The way I've done this is by cutting out the rot, then welding into 2 big pieces, and then cutting little slots into it, bending it down and welding it back together. After this, I then skimmed it with body filler and then sprayed it with what I think was some kind of stone chip spray, which you'd normally spray on your sills and things. It's getting plenty of coats of all sorts of bits and pieces to hopefully stop stone chips and things from breaking through to that steel behind it and rusting it out again. Before I go putting the outer wing on, I turn my attention to the inside and just replace some of the floor section and the inner arch. So you can buy this stuff, which is a replacement floor panel, and it's a good fit. Then I put the panel up against the outside and start tacking it in place. Get everything lined up before you really go for it. And then when you do your spot welds, do one over here, one over there, one over here, back over there, to the right, to the left, to the middle. Don't just go from left to right putting a big weld through it, because you'll completely distort the panel. Pick different places and a spot here and a spot there. After you've ground down all of the little spot welds with a grinder, take your time, give the body panel a really good degreasing, and then key into it with some sort of 60 grit sandpaper so that everything's then going to go and stick to it. The panels come either galv or with a bit of a coating on them. You want to get rid of that. So gave it a skim of body filler, then build up your levels, and then just keep block sanding with a block of wood and some sandpaper, body filler, sandpaper, body filler, until you get everything nice and flat and level. Use primer, or you can get something called Guide Coat, which is like a really cheap spray paint. You just put a very light mist on it and then just block sand it back down. There you can see where I've sort of sanded it down, and then you just get another spray of primer or Guide Coat, sand it down again, and then Guide Coat again, until you get all your levels right and you look down it and you can't see any waves in it. So there we go. Looks pretty good. Not bad for my first panel. So there's a bit of seam sealer over all of the joints on the inside to keep any moisture out so the welds don't rot out. And I'll just leave you guys with a little bit of a montage of how I went going about doing the driver's side, having learnt. The main thing to note here is where I've put that cut in along the top of the arch. I'm now a good inch or so below that V-shaped cut profile in the van. Stay clear of that, makes things a lot easier.